Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Push Start. My name is Andy and I'll be taking you through the tips and tools that will help you get started on your productivity journey. What are we talking about this week? We are talking about how to use your money effectively as a student, or if I speak how students speak, how to kill your money game as a student. Now we know ingenile, and if you're listening to this, it fluctuates when it ngenas into your account, where it deposits into your account. But there are different ways in which you can stay on top of your money game as a student without stressing and allowing it to mess up your studies. Now, why am I qualified to speak about this issue? I've pretty much done everything when it comes to the money thing, mostly bad stuff and then recovering from it. I've gotten into debt with my tuition. I've recovered from that. I've made money using side hustles and businesses that I've started in school, which did fail in some point, but there are lessons that I picked up from other people and watching what they do and also researching online. And then I created this list of things that you can do to be on top of your money game. So without any further ado, let me get right into it. Now, the first tip here that I'm going to start with, it's something that a whole lot of people, whether in books, podcasts, YouTube videos, that have preached about, but we do not apply it because it's so hard to do. And I understand why people can, not do it, because there's so much friction into doing it. And that is to know exactly how much you spend. Oftentimes they just say, you get to have your budget. You have to say how much you're spending here and how much you're spending here. This is all good and fine and dandy for other people, but for most of us it becomes friction when it comes to knowing how much you actually spend. And there is a tip where they say have an envelope where you dictate, okay, 800 goes to groceries or 200 just goes to miscellaneous items like toiletries and stuff like that. But how many times do we actually use cash nowadays? I'm being realistic here. Not a whole lot of us use cash. We are millennials, Gen Zs, so we use a lot of swiping, tapping these days. So with regards to your budget, the first month I would say you need to know how much you spend automatically without you actually whipping out an Excel spreadsheet and writing code. No one wants to do that. Just download one of these apps that they have. In South Africa, they have 22/7. Disclaimer, it's not a sponsor. This is just for information only. You can pretty much link all of your savings, transactional, investments, accounts, more on that later. And 22/7 will just track everything that you spend automatically. And at the end of the month, it'll give you like a notification and you'll know exactly how much you're spending. And then once you start knowing those things, you can set a goal for yourself within that app, right? And then it decreases that friction, but you also know, okay, this month I'm spending this much on groceries, on clothes, on the things that we do for entertainment. Pick your poison, whatever you do, right? So you get an idea of where your money is going. Okay, so now that you know exactly where your expenses are going, I'm gonna go to tip number 2, and that is to trim down as much as you can when it comes to your big items, right? I know people are gonna say, hey, save up on like the smallest things, but it's the biggest items that, if you can save up with, then it makes things easier. The first one off the jump is try to get funding for your tuition, right? And your accommodation. If you can get that out of the way and you're only worried about your, living expenses, then that becomes much easier. As we know, tuition is skyrocketing, whether you're in high school, in a private high school, or you're in a varsity, those things just keep going up. So if you can have a third party get that secured through a bursary, so you need to get your marks really up. I can share some of the tips that I did in order to get those really up by watching this channel. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Shameless plug there. And also as well, if you're in South Africa, there's NSFAS. Yes, it has its issues, but if it does cover your living and also tuition expenses, then you got that covered out. And then another expense that is very big for students is test books. So with test books, pre-owned nje, period. First year, if you're watching this, listen to the OG. You need to save up on your test books by buying pre-owned. You see those guys that are lurking in the campuses, I don't know how they do it nowadays, where they're lurking within the campuses and they're selling pre-owned books. do that. And you also get pre-owned books online these days. And if you can, do get your digital copies in a very ethical way if you can. All right, so that's another thing. And then the fourth thing that comes through when it comes to big expenses, when you need to trim down, it's your groceries. Now, I've added a couple of tips that I've picked up along the years on how to lower your grocery spend. Number one, get a discount card. I don't know which shopper you use, whether it's the smart one, the purple one, the turquoise one. I don't know which one you use, but those cards are very good. A book of mine that I really love and I've been rereading since I got the first copy by Douglas Kruger, 50 Ways That Your Thinking Is Keeping You Poor, recommends this. It calls it ghost money. You see all that discount cash that you're letting go, that is ghost money, and rich people have learned how to make the most out of those. So get your ghost money right and get yourself a discount card. And then another thing that you need to do here when it comes to your groceries, this is something that I picked up from my girlfriend. We started figuring out as we grew with each other, and that is to go to a market and source all of your fruits. And if you can, the meat is cheap there, get it there, right? Why? Because they buy all of these things in bulk, and usually it's locally sourced from their own farmers. They don't pay for big marketing and stuff. You get surprised how much fruit and veg you can get there. Something that's gonna last you for months, right? But do not make this mistake. We made this mistake with my girlfriend. Got a big bag of carrots with no preservation and stuff like that, and then the carrots started spoiling. And then fortunately at the time I was gymming, so like I had to take some of the carrots. So I was snacking with carrots. If a guy visited me at days, he would know I'd have a carrot at hand and I'd be snacking on that. So get to know your preservation, know how to keep these things fresh, invest in a fridge or ask a friend of yours to buy, to get like space in his fridge or her fridge. And then another thing as well that helps is that you need to co-buy your groceries. You can get a lot of things done, especially if you live in the inner city, right? They get these like chunks of meat that are there that you can buy, and then you halve them with a friend, and then you ask the butcher to chop them up for you. Those are things that are really, really helpful. Yeah, now groceries, that's a big thing, for students. And we know, based on experience and also the stats, there are a lot of students that go without food in South Africa. Food scarcity and poverty is a real thing. And there are dozens of ways that you can, get extra money for food. But I feel like that is a big thing for students. And if you can just make sure your food situation is sorted out and you're getting your nutrients balanced, and that's one thing that a market will help you with. If you can get that sorted out, then it'll make your productivity much easier to do because you're well fueled and your mind and body is working okay. All right, so let me get to the fun stuff now. The third tip is to make lay-by your friend. Make lay-by your friend. Now, we come from different situations, right? There are people that could spend like 2 claps or 2K or 2,000 on a pair of shoes and not bat an eye, right? It just comes easy to them. But for the majority of us, we don't have that amount of money to be spending. And what I'm learning as I'm growing is that cash flow is king. Like, you need to have your cash situation sorted out, right? So you need to make lay-by your friend, and lay-by helps you do that, because what you can do is that you can, put a deposit for a shoe right there, put a deposit for an appliance there if you're into tech and stuff like that, and then over a couple of months, while you're managing your groceries this side, and also while you're managing your textbook situation this side, while you're managing your dating situation, going to dates, restaurants, and all of those things, you could be at multiple places at once, right, with a small amount of money, while also fulfilling your dreams. And also, like, we know that FOMO does set in. You also want to feel like other students that have nice things, and you can't like deprive yourself of nice clothes and nice experiences. So lay-by is really king. So a thing that I had, or a statement that I always used to play in my head, is to say that if it's above 300, I lay by it. If I can, I do lay by it. So I just go into a shop, there's a shoe that I saw, okay, how much is the deposit? 20%, lay by. So it really helps, because at the time I had income that was sub 1.5. There was a time in my final year, especially like in 2020 when things were bad, I had income that was sub 1.5 thousand rands, and if you convert that in dollars, you'll see that it is actually a small amount. So I had to balance a lot of things all at once, right, while also keeping independent, making sure the fam is okay, all of those things. So lay-by is your friend, and do ask your local retailer if they have that option. All you need to have is just to have your ID document ready and the deposit that they ask. Okay, now that you got your lifestyle situation sorted out, I always believe that as a person, you need to put your own oxygen mask first. It's a famous phrase. You need to put your own oxygen mask first before you start helping other people or you start really saving, because there's a point in time where you save and it feels like deprivation, right? You feel like you're depriving yourself of living a normal lifestyle, like having proper well-fitting clothes, you know, having a space that is cozy, that is warm, having stationary food, all of those things that are basics for students, right? Once you have all of those things sorted out, this should take you about 3 months or so, 4 months or so, if you've been playing the lay-by game correctly and you've been asking for discounts everywhere, right? Is to start investing in your financial future, but start investing small. That's the fourth tip, right? Yes, we've heard instances where people say, save 10% of your income, save 20% of your income. But guys, let's be realistic here. If they're only sending you 800 Rand per month, right? You can only save so much. 10% of 800 is like 80 bucks, and already you're sitting at like 720 Rand. And with this cost of living, it's barely enough, right, to push all of those things that you need with your lifestyle. So when you do save, start saving small, but create a consistent habit of saving, right? So have that small amount that you set aside and start saving first before you look into things like investing. And before you look into things like investing and saving, invest in yourself first. I'm all for saving, I'm all for investing, but first start with yourself. Invest in yourself. Make sure that you're feeling confident, make sure that you're reading the right books, make sure that you're looking fresh, your clothes are, you know, like you look presentable to other people, so that when you get opportunities, you get to play the part, you get to play the professional that you're being while you are in that school situation. So invest in yourself first, then start saving small amounts, right? And then when you get to a good benchmark like 500, and that 500, it's 500 that can stay in your account and you cannot chow it, then start investing. And even then also start with very small amounts, leave them there and let them grow for yourself. You have your youth ahead of you and you'll be able to save much better when you start having income. But what you need to do is to have a consistent habit. And the mistake that I did was I started saving big chunks of money, but with my survival mode type of lifestyle, I needed to get clothes for interviews, I needed to, you know, balance my girlfriend, or I needed to help out at home, there was a situation, you know, all of these things started, you know, coming up, and then I'll tap into my savings, then I tap a bit more, and then boom, savings are all gone, right? And it's not a matter of only discipline, but also your life situation. You need to make sure your life situation is stable before you start investing into other things like stocks or shares or anything like that, you know. So start with yourself first, and then small consistent amounts, so that when you get your first job, then you can do the big amounts that you are looking for. So now let's say you have like about 500 in savings, or 1,000, or, you know, 1.5, 2,000 most. You're a student, we're looking at these things realistically, right? So let's say you have that amount just floating around. Now I want to get you out of your comfort zone, right? And that is my last step, and that is to use some of that money to make more money, right? Just get into the game of doubling your money, or, you know, 1.5 times in your money, you know, like anything that amounts to growth. That's a skill that is needed nowadays, whether you're going to be working for a corporate or you're going to be an entrepreneur just after you finish school, or whatever that you're going to be doing. But the number one skill that you need to know is to sell, right? And selling involves the increasing of revenue, the direct increase of revenue. And as you know, with our economic situation here in South Africa, I can't go into detail with that, but we know that there's an issue of expansion. And when you allow yourself to expand as an individual, you say, okay, I took 100 Rand and flipped it into a 500 Rand, or took 100 and flipped it into 1,000. you get into that state of looking for opportunities. It trains you to look for opportunities, to speak to people, to ask what they need and provide value to them. Now, let me make an example of how I did this in my varsity and school career. There was a time where we did robotics competitions way back in the day, and we sold ice lollies, or Amacool Time, if you call it Velenga Simzansi. Amacool Time, we sold those things, and we were able to raise money for ourselves to get uniform and to actually go to the competition. Another way that we used to do it with my friends, even after the competition, we started selling Amacool Time on the street corner, and then we would get our money, and then it would fund our lifestyle and things like that. Or we would do lawns, like we'd cut people's lawns, do trimming, a whole day of work, just to get that money to go on trips way back in the day. If you're a 90s kid, you definitely know about all of those trips. And then it started graduating, like in high school, I started helping out people with some of their studies. Then some would trade me test books, or pay me some cash. Then varsity, I started doing graphic design for some people, and then I couldn't do that because my studies became too busy. Then I started selling snacks on campus. A good friend of mine, Shoni Sani, taught me how to sell energy drinks on campus, so we sold those. And like from a small investment of like 125 at that time, you can make anything like 210 gross, and then profit was like 110 or 115 or something like that. Sorry if I got my math wrong, but like it got me trained into looking for opportunities to say, how can I flip 100 into a 200, or how can I flip 100 into 1,000? So that is an essential skill. And I feel like if you were to take anything from this whole episode, it's that one skill to say, how can I increase my income? And you don't need to be fancy. I was selling snacks, like 50-cent snacks, or 3 snacks. I'm a coleslaw, if not a sponsorship. I used to sell all of those things on campus, and other people sell wigs, other people sell different types of things that you can get your hands into. But identify a need, identify a skill you have, identify some time that you have. What do people need, and jump in on that and start earning that money. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. If you are new to the show or you haven't subscribed, do the right thing and subscribe. We'll bring more of these types of episodes. And if you like the audio version of this, you can also get it down below in the description. It's called Push Start Podcast, and I have audio sessions, and I also have deep dives into different areas of productivity, education, and also micro entrepreneurship. Thanks a lot, and keep productive and stay mentally healthy. Cheers.